Welcome back, and if you saw the opening segment, then you know we're doing a little bit of shooting in the dark, and that is because we are doing a review on the Olight PLX weapons light. So first off, just to get this out of the way, Olight did send this to us for review. There was nothing exchanged, there was no preconception of how the review would go. They simply just sent it to us and wanted to know our thoughts. So that is what we're going to do today. So what is the Olight PLX? So I'm sure it would fit on some larger frames. However, I would personally consider this a compact weapon light. And so I've got it right here on a Glock 19 Gen 6. And as you can see, it sits pretty much flush and looks pretty good. The Olight PLX has one interesting feature. And what that is you can see there is a sort of large lens right here, as well as two smaller ones above it, sort of in the shape of an upside down triangle. And what that actually is two different sets of lights in this. So the unique thing about this is that it is both a floodlight and sort of a much more concentrated high beam spotlight, which I think is pretty cool because it just gives me a jack of all trades. However, in this case, I've got to say it's not really giving up too much performance for the size package that it comes in. So in the flood setting, which is going to be illuminating a large area, is going to be about 1200 lumens. And the spotlight, or the really high concentrated candela beam, is going to be at 22,000 to 23,000 candela. So this thing is going to be pretty concentrated, and Olight claims this will actually reach out pretty far. And with that comes 6 different sort of light settings in a way. So you basically have high and low in both the high beam and the flood feature, as well as in both you actually have a strobe function with each lighting style, which I think is pretty cool just because it gives you a ton of versatility. Very often with a lot of the weapon lights that I'm picking, I'm either going for super high candela or super high lumens, and they both are super useful in very different situations. So for instance, in a close quarters environment or inside a very enclosed space, a super high beam candela is going to be very blinding because it has such like a very hot and white hotspot against, sort of very close surroundings. Whereas the flood in a very close confined space is going to fully light up that space without causing any blindness or any glare. This obviously is counter to the benefits of the high candela beam, which will excel outside or going through other barriers like other types of light sources or smoke or things like that. And the flood in that case is going to have a lot of trouble punching through a lot of those other types of barriers, such as photonic or light barriers and smoke or other kind of clouding debris. And to change this on the fly, all you have to do is actually hit this little button that is sitting right here on the side, and you can slide that up or down. So up is going to be the spotlight and down is going to be the flood. And even when the light is activated, I can flip that at will pretty easily. Okay, and so the attachment system is also pretty good. So you have a captured screw that is right here on the side of the body. And when you have unscrewed the screw as far as it will go out, you will push on this and it opens up that Picatinny rail spot. And if you notice right here where the tab is for the rails on most firearms, it actually has a really cool feature in that this whole thing can be moved and has 4 different positions. So if I'm using multiple platforms on this particular light and moving this light from one platform to another, I have a lot of options and pretty much can make this fit almost everything that I will want to put it on, outside of probably some slightly more awkward Picatinny rails on some hosts. This also is a rechargeable light. So this is actually my first experience using a light that is completely rechargeable without any type of removable batteries. And usually I'm very used to when you have things like this that need some type of USB-C or micro USB charger, that there is rubber covering this, and it's kind of hard to fish that out and actually get it removed. So this is actually an aluminum trap door that has a recess that just opens up super easily. And when you are done charging it, you can turn that and it sits flush with the light itself. So I thought that was pretty cool in terms of ease of charging, as well as just accessibility to it. And you don't even have to take this off of whatever EDC or firearm that you end up putting this on, you can just charge it from there if you would like. And so for this test, I actually mounted this on quite a few different models just to see how it would fit and how it would look on a couple different options. And when I first did that, I was kind of interested to see how this actual screw and how the rail securement would actually work. I noticed immediately that there's nowhere to Loctite or kind of thread lock the threads for this, but as you go to tighten this down all the way, you'll actually hear it start ratcheting. So it is actually grabbing on the inside to prevent this from unturning. I tightened it hand tight and was quite surprised that not once did I ever have this actually unscrew from a firearm through even some heavy firing schedules and getting these things pretty hot. So that was actually a really, really cool thing that I didn't actually have to worry about. And like I said, it was hand tight, so it didn't require me to torque it. It just was get it hand tight, turn it a couple clicks more, and then I was good to go. And so piggybacking off of the durability of this mounting system is actually the light body itself. So this light body is made of hardened aluminum, and I gotta say, off of like initial impressions when I opened the box, it felt very high quality. And if I'm being totally honest, Olight is not something that was on my bingo card of things that I would review, because in the past, it has definitely been considered just a much more economical option, but the performance and the durability just did not seem to be there. But as the years have gone on, they have continued to improve on these products. And now you actually have something that feels incredibly solid and I actually think could take a beating, or at least it feels like it could take a beating. And with that all aluminum housing, you're gonna have an IPX7 rating on this light. And what that means is it is submersible for 30 minutes in completely submerged water up to about a meter. So it can withstand the pressure as well as being completely submerged for that long without sustaining any long-term damage to the light. So this was truly built to try and tackle some of the other sort of compact lights that are on the market and actually make itself a duty and everyday carry style light that could actually live up to that calling. Okay, and so really quickly, let's talk about what comes in this box. So you're obviously gonna have your light, and then you're going to have this box as well that comes with it. And inside of it's going to be your USB-C charging cable, a Glock compatible Picatinny slot, and its own tool that will take down all of these screws and all of the hardware on the light, as well as is the sort of interface for unscrewing and screwing on the Olight PLX to other firearms. I know very often it seems these days that higher and higher end lights come with less and less. You have to buy the light, then you have to buy some type of mounting solution for it or some type of attachment. And it really feels like so many of these now don't come with much of anything. So I do very much appreciate that Olight is actually including some additional accessories into this, as the Glock plate, for instance, just in case you're using older gen Glocks or have some other things you want to put this on. They're at least kind of setting you up to have a few options out of the box. But what everybody came for, what about the overall performance and using this light? So I came into this review with a little bit of skepticism and probably some low expectations just because of what I had experienced or heard from Olights in the past. But I've been paying attention, and the last few years, they definitely have started making a pretty big impact or wave in the industry for some quality and very durable lights. So with that said, we fired about 500 rounds with this light mounted on various platforms just to see if we could cause any issues or had any trouble out of it. And I'm happy to report that we did not, and it actually was quite a pleasure to use. So going along with performance, part of that is ease of use, or the ability to apply the features that come on this light. And so to activate it, you have two options. You can either press it in, or you can press down on it. Now, with my larger hands, it is a little bit easier for me to press down on it, but both options work depending on your hand size. And like we said, there are multiple different sort of settings and features for the lights. You have high, low, as well as strobe, but you also have momentary and constant on. So if I just click it and let go, it's constant. If I click it and hold, that is momentary. So again, there's giant debates online whether lights need to have momentary or not. but if you can incorporate it very intuitively into a light like this, I don't really see a reason why you shouldn't, just to make everybody happy and to allow everybody some version of use for however they want to run a weapon light. So if I'm being honest, the majority of the time that I was shooting this, I kept it on the spotlight or high beam candela mode, just because that is the one I preferred the most. Even in a 25-yard range at night, or obviously just in the dark, this punched through the darkness incredibly well. It was super easy to see the targets that I was shooting at 25 yards. And that was honestly just my preferred, I guess, like sight picture or vision component between the two settings. I did mess around and play a little bit shooting with the floodlight, and it lit the range incredibly well, but you could tell at the sort of farther distances, about 20 to 25 yards, it definitely lost a lot of power, and just in terms of how far it could push that light. So I definitely was a much bigger fan of the sort of higher, more concentrated beam, because when I was hitting the target, it did sort of spill over into the rest of the end of the range, and I felt like I had very good visibility for everything else at the end of the bay when I was shooting, even just at a single target. I threw a couple other targets up at one point just to kind of show or kind of test out the visibility with the spotlight and the flood. And like I said, I just much preferred the high beam. And we threw this into a ton of different situations. Obviously, we did total darkness, we did some darkness. When we were shooting for the review, I was shooting through some like studio lights that were positioned off camera, and even threw in a ton of both heavy smoke and sort of hazy smoke throughout the bay that I could shoot through. And I think those conditions are where the high beam really showed its performance and why I prefer it. I think just because we're not in those situations all that often unless we're manufacturing them on a range setting, we don't really see necessarily the benefit or need for it. But when I was shooting the flood, especially in the hazy smoke, I really couldn't see a whole lot in front of my face past the smoke itself. And as I shot more, there's gunpowder and just smoke coming out of the barrel of the gun itself. And that just kind of clouded the picture more. And at certain points, I couldn't even see my target. And that is why, for me, the high beam was so much more preferred, and I thought excelled in this field. When I had the high beam on, shooting through all of the dense smoke, the hazy smoke, even the actual gunpowder of the gun going off itself through like long strings where it really would accumulate in front of the gun, this light punched all the way through all of those, and never at any point did I physically lose the light on the target. So it punched through absolutely everything, and that was just a much more pleasurable shooting experience for me in terms of being able to positively identify the thing that I'm shooting at. When you put a weapon light on a EDC or some type of platform like this, the entire concept is for me to see and know what I'm shooting at in all conditions. So me being able to see the target while I'm shooting at it is probably the most important feature that I would want out of a weapon light. And because this had such a concentrated beam for such a small light, I had absolutely no issues in any of those conditions. Even at one point, I put my X300 Turbo, which is on my current EDC, up against this, and at 25 yards, there really was not much of a difference at all. Okay, so this is the Surefire X300 Turbo, which has 66,000 candela, and so that's what it looks like on the target at 25 yards. And this is the Olight PLX at 25 yards with its high beam, which is about 22,000 candela. So obviously at distance, the X300 is going to for sure shoot farther with a tighter beam that you're going to be able to see and identify targets farther out. But at this distance, they are pretty comparable in terms of how much, how sort of focused the beam is and how much light you actually can see and how much information you can gather from whatever it is that you're shining this light at. Now, the Surefire X300 Turbo has around 66 to 68,000 candela, whereas this only has about 23. So if we were outside at farther and farther distances, you would see the Surefire X300 Turbo excel there for sure. But within 25 yards and maybe a little bit farther, this had such close performance to something like a Surefire X300 Turbo that I really couldn't tell a huge difference, which was absolutely surprising for me. When I pulled my X300 out at first, it was just going to be to show a couple of people how much brighter that light was. And to be completely honest, I was surprised that this had such a well-defined beam that pushed as far as it did. But alas, everything cannot be all fairy tales and rainbows, because there are a couple of things that I didn't like, or maybe would definitely just change in future iterations of this. And the first one being the buttons. So I, like I said, have very large hands, and it feels a little awkward, and I have to really take a good chunk of my hand positioning away to hit this light. Although it's not far, I'm having to move it from activating the light to bringing it back up to where I normally would be shooting from. And so I would just simply like to see some extended paddles, or some extended options that raise a bit higher, just so that you don't have to take your support hand off as much. The other big thing, and this only happened a couple of times, but it's worth noting, is that I, at a couple of points, inadvertently switched the light mode from high beam to flood, or flood to high beam, when I was testing both of those different styles of light out. And I would just like to either see this be a little bit stiffer of an activation, or maybe some like mild fencing around it, so that I'm not just hitting this ledge very easily and popping that up. The other thing that I would like to see just improved upon is the sort of rail mounting system. Now, as a design, I really, really liked this, even though I was not particularly expecting to. But the only issue that I ran into is on some platforms, even with the screw backed all the way out, it was quite cumbersome, and at times just a little finicky trying to get this light mounted to some of these Picatinny rails. It needed just maybe another 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch extra sort of space for that Picatinny to move out away from the pick rail, just to make it fit a little bit better on some of those guns. However, I was able to get them on every platform that I tried it on. It just, on a few models, was a little finicky and took me a couple extra minutes to get that. But just in terms of improvements, that would definitely be a spot that I would want to see just added to it just a little bit. And probably my last sort of feature that I would say is not my favorite in general, I don't really know if there's a way to improve upon this, is going to be the USB charging. And although I really like the design of this USB charging port, I just do not like the fact that it is rechargeable. Because we shot so many rounds through this, and pretty much the entire time I had this light on, I was draining the battery. At some points, I had to stop to recharge the battery, even though it lasted a really acceptable amount of time for a weapon light this size. And just having to sit there and wait for extended periods of time for this to charge when I did need to charge it, that just is not my favorite thing. I'm used to a lot of sort of weapon mounted lights having batteries that I can just keep extras of, and as soon as my light goes down, or I notice the performance of the battery starting to diminish, I can literally just take 12 seconds, replace it, and I'm completely back to 100%. So in general, I'm not a massive fan overall from a design perspective of rechargeable lights, although this still was not the end of the world. I think you just need to be more diligent about charging it, especially if you are going to be carrying something like this daily. However, for like shooting classes or anything like that, I feel like this would be rather cumbersome, because for a lot of sort of low light pistol classes, that's just not going to have the battery to last through one of those without requiring an extensive charging period. So, Olight. Not what I expected, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I'm almost glad that I came into this with lower expectations than I came away with, because I didn't really have any preconceived notions of high performance, and this thing genuinely blew me out of the water, which is not something I expected to say at the end of this video. It has proven to be a very high quality weapon light. It's been torture tested by tons of people. I'm not going to do any of that, because there's more qualified people on YouTube to do that than us here at Blackstone. And so with that being said, I think this is a super durable light, and especially in terms of a little more economical option for a weapon light, this thing is an absolute winner in my book, and has a ton of features that a wide array of firearms and just different styles of weapon light users will have access to. And if this is something that you do currently run or are thinking about running, the good news is there are a ton of holster options that now fit this light with a ton of different models of host firearms. So you're good to go there in terms of being able to find something to carry this. So that is my review of the Olight PLX. I am pleasantly surprised, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but this thing was pretty awesome. If you want to see more reviews like this and other cool content, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and as always, we'll see you on the range.